That summer, the river behind Aunt Lila's house wore the colour of old coins, and the cicadas kept time with our breath, as if time itself were learning to listen again. The house stood at the edge of the yard like a patient animal, shutters blinking in the heat, a stair-step of memories rising and sinking with every footfall. I was 9, a mouthful of freckles and questions, and the world was a little too bright, a little too certain. As children's summers often are, before they soften into something wiser and more careful. The house did not look remarkable to the casual eye. It wore its age like a shawl, thin here, stout there, dusted with the same breath of rain and wood polish that scented the hall when you first opened the front door. It had a way of listening, I learned, and of learning the voices you brought to its rooms. The kitchen light flickered in a way that suggested it remembered every recipe ever simmered in it. Every argument warmed over the stove. Every soft confession spoken into the grate when nobody but the stove listened. On the 3rd day of that summer, the air grew thick with a kind of patient suspense, and Aunt Lila pressed a strip of blue ribbon into my hand, the colour of a sky I had not yet learned to distrust. She spoke in a tone that sounded foreign in a house that knew her voice as well as her footsteps, calm and careful, like someone telling a child a secret. "If you and Mira will behave, you might help me with a little game," she said. Mira was our neighbour, a cousin by some distant accounting of clan and town, quiet and pale but with eyes that collected every colour of a room and kept it like bees in a jar. She had vanished from the house one day, only to leave behind a hush and a rumour that she might someday be found between walls or under a floorboard's old breath. The ritual was child's theatre, a game that pretended to coax back what had drifted away. We drew a chalk circle on the attic floor, not perfectly round but earnest, and placed in its centre a small glass of water. We lit a single candle, its flame a thin nick of light that trembled as if the room itself sighed. The blue ribbon wandered around the edge, a thread tying us to Mira's memory, to a cousin who wore such ribbons in the photographs in the hallway, to a presence we hoped would step back into the photo frame and wink at us. We spoke her name in hushed cadences, Mira, 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 as if the syllables could braid themselves into a thread and pull her toward us out of the seam between then and now. The house listened with the odd, almost listening patience of something that have learned to weigh sound the way a mother weighs a child's fear. The clock on the landing ticked in a tempo that did not match any clock in the house, a slow, deliberate metronome that seemed to measure the breath we drew. The ceiling held its own weather, little currents that moved in and out of the corners, eddies that did not belong to the air, but to memory. The floorboards felt warmer under Mira's bare feet in the moments before she last spoke, which is to say, before she disappeared. A soft creak, a laugh that sounded too close to the surface of a thought, a girl's voice stepping out from the wall with a sheen of water in its eyes, as though the room itself wore tears for the sake of her. I do not recall when Mira stopped being a neighbour and became part of the house's quiet companionship, the way a chair becomes indispensable to a room and then to the heart of a family. It is a curious thing to say, but it is true. We played at summoning her, and in the same way the house began to summon us back to it, every summer since, as if memory was salt blown into a crevice until the crevice remembered how to hold more water than it should. That summer, the attic above Aunt Lila's pantry gave back something heavier than a memory, the old wallpaper peeled at the corner, and behind it lay a seam like the mouth of a secret corridor that did not exist on the house's blueprints of old pride. The seam breathed. It exhaled dust motes and a faint scent of lilac water, Mira's favourite scent, the very scent which had lived in her ribbon and followed us like a trail of small innocent mischief. The air there grew cooler, as if the room itself remembered to blink. We found boxes behind the wallpaper, moth-eaten clothes Mira wore in the photographs, a scarf the colour of pale winter skies, a bundle of letters tied with the same blue ribbon that now tangled around my fingers with the ache of a memory long pressed flat. The letters were not addressed to us. They spoke in Mira's voice, though the ink belonged to someone older, a caretaker perhaps, a mother who had learned to write in the margins when the world became too loud to listen to the centre. Each page carried Mira's handwriting in a delicate tremor, as if her hand learned to be careful even in writing about things she could not fully hold anymore. The house was teaching us to read its age, the way a grandmother teaches a grandchild to listen for the clock's real breath. In the margins of one letter, there was a sentence repeated, faintly cross-hatched, as if the writer's pencil trembled with fear and love at once. I am here. I am still here. This is where you will someday come to find me. It was not addressed to any visible name. The words were a promise to a presence that did not need a name to know you. That summer, a wall turned out to be a door, or perhaps a doorway to a corridor that ran behind the walls, as naturally as the corridor you walk to reach the kitchen from the back stairs. The corridor was not long in distance, but long in memory. A tunnel lined with trunks of a family's past, every trunk opened to reveal a life you thought you'd left behind when you grew too tall for your own secrets. It was there we learned that Mira had not simply vanished into thin air. She had become, in some manner of air and plaster, a current within the house, a quicksilver thread that braided itself between rooms and years. We discovered a room that did not belong to the floors and plans of the house. A tiny chamber with a single window that faced the river. It held Mira's clothing, her shoes, the lilac-scented bottle she used to dab behind her ears, and a chair placed exactly before the window, as though Mira himself, our memory of her, had never ceased to place her child self in a position to witness water becoming light at dusk. The letter in Mira's handwriting lay on the chair, as if she had placed it there to tell us to come and listen for what the house would tell us next. In those days, I believed the house was a repository of time, not a participant. But even a child can sense when a place decides to keep you, not the other way around. The attic's light